Hi, everyone. I think we're going to get started in just a minute. Waiting for final people to join. Okay. So, good afternoon, good evening in Israel. My name is Kalela Lancaster. I'm the Israel Director of National Council of Jewish Women. I live in Israel. I'm delighted to welcome you to this briefing webinar, along with my wonderful colleagues at the Hadassah Foundation and the Jewish Funders Network. Up front, I want to say that we are holding this event in real-time war conditions, as you know. So there may be disruption, there may be sirens. Some of our speakers may need to move to safe rooms or shelters. And we will do our best to navigate if this happens, and we will ask for your understanding and patience. If worst comes to worst and our Israeli speakers do need to leave, we actually have a pre-recorded segment that we'll share. But we hope that it won't come to that. So on this call, you will hear from Israeli and American representatives of all three sponsoring organizations, from donors invested in the work that we'll share today, and most importantly, from the Israeli feminist field. Women who lead organizations that are on the front lines, not the front lines of a military campaign, but the front lines of the campaign for equity, for recognition, for justice, representation, consideration, and care. The campaign for a decent future for this country, for a return to the core values of our Declaration of Independence, and the campaign for hope for our society and the region as a whole. Our speakers today will not be offering a geopolitical commentary on the current conflict with Iran, but rather they will share insights about its fallout. This war, as you all know, is a new link in a chain of crisis and trauma that Israeli women, children, and families have been dealing with for at least 3 years, depending on where you start counting from. The judicial overhaul with dramatic implications for women's rights, October the 7th and the multi-front war, mass displacement, and the agonizing hostage crisis. Many of us have been on the streets shouting for what now feels like as long as we can remember. We've been navigating loss, anxiety, and fear at levels we couldn't have conceived of before. Now they are just our reality. They've been normalized, and many of us feel quite numb. And yet, as you will hear about today, Israeli feminist leaders are not staying silent. They're not passive, and they're not stopping for a second. On this call, we will hear about how Israel's most vulnerable women and girls are impacted by this chain of crisis, about the differential price paid by women and girls in all aspects of life, employment, health, education, and more. You will hear about the implications of this situation in an election year, an election in which it is vital that we succeed in placing equity on the agenda and women at decision-making tables. And you will hear about a vision for the future that was built collaboratively and carefully by over 30 organizations working through NCJW's field building platform, Connecting for Impact. It is no small thing to hold a vision for the future and a commitment to march along the path towards that vision when bombs are falling, sirens are ringing, and we are running with our kids to shelters. Or when the women your organization serves are in a desperate situation now due to the never-ending state of emergency. So I want to express my gratitude to each of the women and men who have been working with us in this effort for the last 2 years, putting aside the specific focus of their own organization to build something bigger together. I understand that there are some 400 people or so on this call, and I want to say that your support, interest, care, and commitment to us here in Israel at this very difficult time is extremely moving. It gives us strength, and I want to thank each and every one of you for being here today. And now I'd like to turn to NCJW's newly appointed CEO, my dear colleague, Jody Rabhan, to share some reflections. Jody.
Thank you so much, Kalela. Again, I'm Jody Rabhan, CEO of National Council of Jewish Women. And NCJW has been active in Israel since before the establishment of the state. And we've been a dedicated partner to the gender equity field really since it emerged. Today, our emphasis is building the infrastructure and the foundations for all the organizations in the feminist field so that they can leverage their power as one. I'm so proud that NCJW, together with the Hadassah Foundation and Jewish Funders Network, that we're able to bring you some of the key voices today by way of this webinar so that you can hear more about the realities on the ground and the collective plans for the day after. I recently returned from Israel. It's hard to believe, given that now it's a country at war. And we got to meet with some of the people that you are going to meet today and hear from. I heard about the vision. I heard about the work. I heard about the impact that could truly be possible in our lifetime. And from what you will get to hear, you will understand very clearly that this war has not stopped them. The people that we are about to hear from are really committed to a future of equity where women are equal partners to shaping the future in Israel. I'm really happy to turn it back to Kalela so that we can dive in and hear from our incredible speakers. And Kalela, I just want to thank you for that beautiful open.
Thank you, Jody. So all I really want to do right now is introduce an amazing colleague and a dear friend, Hamutal Guri, who is going to be chairing a really important panel for us today. Hamutal is a leading Israeli feminist thinker and activist. She's a cultural critic, a lecturer, consultant, and most importantly, a storyteller for personal, organizational, social, and political transformation. Hamutal served as executive director of the Daphne Fund, which was Israel's first and only explicitly feminist fund. And she was on the founding team of NCJW's Connecting for Impact, and today she serves as an on-the-ground advisor to the Hadassah Foundation with regards to their Israel investments. So I'm delighted that Hamutal, you'll be facilitating our panel of wisdom from the field, and I'd like to turn over to you now to kick it off and introduce our panelists.
Thank you so much, Kalela, for this introduction and for beautiful and inspiring opening remarks. In these trying times, it is really a source of great comfort and solace to be in the company of such inspiring and like-minded women. And those of us who have dedicated their lives to safeguarding women's rights and promoting gender equity, we know all too well that women and girls are negatively affected in times of war in unique ways, while they're also the ones to care for their families and their communities. Yet somehow, in times of prolonged conflict, there is this natural human tendency to operate in survival mode. It is a state where the human soul, under immense pressure, narrows its focus solely to the existential threat. In this mode, the values we cherish most, equality, justice, and human rights, are often kind of pushed aside, treated as luxuries that we can simply not afford at the moment. But the truth is exactly the opposite. Equity and justice, and specifically in the context of our conversation today, gender equity and women's rights, are not luxuries. They're not extras to be revisited only when the guns fall silent. On the contrary, they're vital. They're bedrock of our national resilience. They are essential, not just for the survival of Israeli society, but for its ability to heal, to proliferate, and to truly thrive once again. And so to take a deeper dive into the impact of war on women and the critical roles that women and women's organizations, and specifically the member organizations of the Connecting for Impact initiative, play in times of war, we have four very wise women, leaders of civil society organizations and members of the CFI initiative. Dr. Yael Hassan, CEO of the Adva Center, Dr. Naama Goldberg, founder and CEO of Lo Omdot Mineged, which in English means we do not stand idly by. Yael Boim, founder and CEO of the Association for the Advancement of Gender Equity in Education, and Tal Hochman, CEO of the Israel Women's Network. And I want to turn to you, Dr. Yael Hasson, one of my sources of constant inspiration and sources of knowledge, to provide us with sort of the knowledge infrastructure for our conversation.
Wow, thank you, Hamtal, and thank you everyone for being here and for having me here with you today. Over the past 12 days, millions of Israelis have once again been living between sirens and shelters. Behind the headlines about security and geopolitics lies another story, one that often remains invisible: the gendered impact of war on everyday life. More than 2 years ago, we wrote the guide on genderless philanthropy in the shadow of the October 7 war. At the time, we added an emergency chapter examining the impact of the war on women, the price they pay, and the essential role women and women's organizations play in supporting communities and rebuilding society. Even then, we showed how women were largely absent from recovery frameworks, from return to work policies, rehabilitation programs, and national budget priorities. Unfortunately, much of what we wrote then still holds true today. And all of this is happening within a broader political context. The current war, the second Iran war, is unfolding while a profound democratic crisis continues to reshape Israel's institutions and threaten women's rights. At the same time, the government is now advancing a state budget that largely ignores women and their specific needs. In other words, the gendered impact of the war are not happening in isolation, but within a political and economic environment that is already pushing gender equality backwards. One place where this becomes particularly visible is the labor market. Women are structurally more vulnerable in employment. They are overrepresented in hourly jobs, temporary employment, and part-time work. Data from Israel's employment service shows a pattern seen in many crises. Women are pushed out of the labor market in larger numbers than men during the initial shock. But do policy take women's realities into account? One proposal currently under discussion suggests that parents of children under 14 should choose which parent will take the unpaid leave. On the surface, this appears gender neutral, but when wages are unequal, choice is rarely neutral, and wages are not equal. According to the OECD, Israel ranks among the countries with the highest gender wage gaps in the developed world, placing second among OECD countries with the largest pay disparities. So when policies assume families can simply choose which parent stays home, they often reinforce existing inequalities. To fully understand women's situation during war, we must also talk about the care economy. Even before the war, Israel faced a growing care deficit, a structural shortage of affordable, high-quality care services. Public spending on civilian services is already lower than the OECD average, affecting education, welfare services, mental health systems, and long-term care. Sectors where women make up the majority of the workforce, often in demanding jobs with low pay and difficult working conditions. During war times, the demand for care increases dramatically, while the systems meant to provide it are already understaffed and underfunded. At the same time, invisible care work inside households expands. This invisible labor is essential for maintaining social resilience, yet it is not recognized in economic policy. The unequal impact of war is also evident in even the most basic aspects of physical protection. Despite years of security threats, around 28% of Israel's population, about 2.6 million people, still have no access to standard protected space. And these gaps are not distributed equally. Access to protection is strongly shaped by economic status and by whether communities are Jewish or Arab. In fact, around 60 Arab municipalities have no public shelters at all. Now imagine the situation of a woman at home with the children, schools closed, childcare unavailable, sirens sounding, rockets falling, and no protected space she can reach within minutes. Periods of conflict also tend to increase violence against women. Violence often, as we know, intensifies not only during wars, but also afterwards, as trauma, economic stress, and circulation of weapons affect households and communities. The ongoing crisis in Israel, combined with economic pressures, weakened support networks, and overstretched social services, has contributed to growing severity in domestic violence cases and an increase in femicides. At the same time, while women carry much of the social burden of war, they remain largely absent from decision-making spaces. In Israel today, women are almost completely excluded from key positions of influence, and this has real consequences. When women are not present where policies are designed, recovery frameworks, whether related to employment, compensation, or social services, often fail to reflect women's realities. Yet, despite these challenges, women are central to Israeli society resilience. Women make up the majority of workers in essential public services. Women's organizations have also stepped in where public systems fall short, providing humanitarian assistance, legal support, services for survivors of violence, and policy advocacy. As you will hear later, Connecting for Impact helps translate this work into systemic change by developing shared knowledge, strengthening organizational and professional capacity, and promoting strategic collaboration across the feminist field. And yet, during emergencies, and also in routine times, gender issues are still perceived as secondary, even a niche issue. But gender is not a niche issue. It is a strategic one. If we want resilient communities, a strong economy, and a healthy democracy, gender must be integrated in the long-term planning, policy design, and philanthropic investment. I invite you to join us in making gender equality central to every response, every policy, and every investment. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much. I want to turn it now to Dr. Naama Goldberg, the founder and CEO of Lo Omdot Mineged. Do not stand idly by. When I met Naama several years ago, she was part of this group of activists that came together to help and support prostitution survivors. Today, she leads an organization with amazing staff that supports prostitution survivors in so many ways. So she's not only a visionary, she's also the I can do it kind of lady. Naama, tell us about what you are working on these days and what you are seeing within your community.
First of all, thank you very much for having me. I want to say that women on the margin are pushed even further out. Women at risk and girls at risk, whether it is PTSD complex or domestic violence or sexual violence, experience emergency and wartime in a worse, overwhelming way. I can tell you that the number of calls to our helplines increased immensely. If I look at the October war at 2023, we got something like 60 or 100 calls per day. And now, the last week, the number increased. So, and women in that kind of situation, our lack of food, our lack of security, they're emotionally distressed, but the staff is also dealing with survivor mode. So it's kind of hard for both of us, for both sides. And they are the weakest link. I mean, we have to help them and we have to look for ourselves also. So it's kind of challenging times.
Thank you so much, Naama. And I think you are a vivid example that you are not in survival mode, because not for a minute you're not forgetting the women who are most marginalized and are most at risk. And so generously continue to be there for them. And thank you for who you are and for what you do and for the Resilience Cluster at CFI. I want to now turn it over to Yael. And as you can see, I have intimate personal memories with each and every one of you. So I don't know if it was a decade ago that Yael Boim was a fellow at the Mandel Institute for Educational Leadership, and she wanted to pick my brain about gender equity education. And today she is the CEO of the Association for the Advancement of Gender Equity in Education. So another woman who is both a visionary and let's just do it kind of lady. Yael, what are you seeing these days in the education system? How are girls doing?
Thank you, Hamutal, for this kind introduction. So what I'm seeing in the education system is that the gender gaps between boys and girls, the gender gap that we knew existed even before the war, are getting bigger and bigger. By that, I mean that girls' tendency to low self-esteem in their voice, in their academic work, in their skills is getting bigger. So they feel less secure because of what's happening outside, and because it's harder usually for girls to be in situations of uncertainty. They are also expected more than boys to help around the house, right? All the family is at home and there's a lot of work to do and a lot of noise and a lot of food to cook. So girls more than boys are expected to help with this and to help with their younger siblings. Something else that we're seeing, especially about top performing girls, that the gap between boys and girls, top performing boys and girls in high schools in Israel, is getting very, very big. And actually, Israel now is holding the record, is at the top, has the biggest gender gap in among top performing high school students. So in order to deal with all of this, we continue doing the work that we do. And this week, we actually delivered sessions for teachers every day, literally under fire during missiles attack. We train teachers to look at these gender gaps, to realize that girls and boys are affected differently, and we teach them ways to address these gaps. We do it all year long and regardless of the war, but during the war, it's especially important that we train them how to develop resilience and leadership skills among girls, and to not stop and even do more the work to advance girls to choosing tech subjects in high school, because they're pulling back from so many things, girls now in school. So it's important always, but it's especially important now as the gender gaps becomes bigger. And it's important, especially now as we look to the future, to start addressing the gender gaps at a young age at the education system.
Thank you so much, Yael. And I think it is such critical knowledge that distress is displayed differently and manifests itself differently between boys and girls. And because girls tend to be more quiet, society often overlooks their distress. So thank you so much for what you shared with us and for your daily work. And our last speaker is Tal Hochman, CEO of the Israel Women's Network. And when I first met Tal, she was a staff member, not yet a CEO of the Women's Network, the Israel Women's Network. But what I noticed about her when I first met her, and even more so now, is that she is a collaboration wizard. And she brings that to her work at IWN and also to the cluster at the Connecting for Impact initiative. So Tal, what are you seeing in your work, and also what are you seeing for the day after the war, which we all hope will come as soon as possible?
Okay. Thank you for having me on this important panel. I will start by saying that the massive thing that we see is that there are no women in leadership positions in Israel. This is an historic low of numbers of women. Just to give you a snapshot, there are 0 executive directors of government ministries out of 29. IWN has an appeal to the High Supreme Court of Justice based on this specific situation, and we have received an historic ruling about this, saying that the government is not abiding the law. If less than 15% of the members of the Knesset, the Israeli parliament, are women, and only 2 out of 14 members of the cabinet, which is in the government, are women. So we understand that women are not around the table, that important decisions are being made. And this is not just a question of counting heads and seeing how many women are around the table, because we all know that the decisions that are being made on our lives. So just to give you a short story about the Home Front Command guidelines that were presented a few days ago. So the new guidelines said on the same sentence that the educational centers will remain closed while workplaces will be open, which every woman, you don't have to be a mother to see and to understand that this doesn't make any sense. We know that there were no women around that table that made that decision. We know that we are not being taken care or considered in these policies. And as Yael mentioned at the beginning, the question of who will remain with the children is just not a question. We all know that the mothers are the ones staying with the children. I spoke to friends of mine who make good salaries, work in high-tech industries, but their husbands make more money than they are, and it's also they who stay with the children, even though there are very good at what they do. They're team members and they're leading teams in their jobs. So they are the ones staying with the children. The Israel Women's Network have established a women's rights center at the beginning of the October 7 war. We've stopped counting the wars, so that war. So we've been helping women exercise their rights with everything related to the war for the past almost 3 years. Because we know, because our work is doing advocacy work in the Knesset. We do lobby and we represent women who have undergone gender discrimination in courts. And we know that there will not be another person around the table to raise the needs of women. So we have started to collect data and to help these women individually and to take the macro level issues to the Knesset table. So I'm kind of amazed, but also very sad to say that we have a 700% increase in the number of calls since the beginning of this attack, this war. Women call us all day asking for information, asking for someone to help them understand what their rights are, how they can be helped, what kind of compensation they deserve. And the sad reality is that there are not a lot of answers we can give them. And so we are doing a lot of advocacy work with the Treasury Ministry and with the National Security Office and everything we can do to raise the awareness of these women. And it's really very important for me to stress that the question is not how this war will end or what will happen, how we will all recover from this in the next year or so, because as Yael mentioned at the beginning, we are in a very fragile moment in the Israeli democracy state, and the decisions that will be made today are decisions that will kind of make the way Israel will look like in the next 50 years and 100 years. So when we know that women are not counted around the Knesset table and around the government table, we know that we are not counted in these policies. So it is more crucial than ever to be around that table. And just to end it with like a, a last note, talking about elections, 2026 is election year for Israel. And we don't know exactly when it will be, but 2026 is the year. There is no chair of any party that is a woman. Exclusively all men. And if you ask me, I think that all of them were something in the army. We joke that they all wear the same Uniqlo coat, black coat that military IDF men usually do in Israel. And this is very alarming for us as well, because talking about women's needs around election time is crucial and important. And we have much more work to do now that we know that there is no one chair of a party that is a woman. Thank you.
Thank you, Tal. Thank you so much. And Yael Boim, I want to circle back to you. Yael Hassan mentioned the care economy, and we know, and we talked about how women takes caring roles in times of peace and in time of war. But what happens to women's health during war?
So that is a big, big issue. And a research conducted by Women and Their Bodies organizations shows that women experience very high levels of stress and anxiety. They sleep not so good at night. I'm sure you can imagine why. They do less exercise, so they're not able to take very good care of themselves. They feel less safe in the public space. And what's extremely alarming is that 55% of women asked feel less safe at their own homes. So with all of this, anxiety, stress, sleep deprivation, and this sense of not being safe, they're also less inclined to use health services that are being offered to them. And around 40% of women in Israel say, I do not go to take the kind of what the doctor says I should take care of, and I should go and check this and check that, and then get treatment. They don't have, I think, the brain space and the time to take care of themselves while they take care of everyone else. So looking at this, both health, both education, both employment, we realize that this is the time, and we cannot wait another minute in order to work with those big systems in Israel and support them implementing gender perspective into the work that they do in order to rebuild Israeli society and future.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. You know, as I listen to the four of you, it becomes very clear that as women professionals that are working towards gender equity, you're all offering sort of a gender definition of what safety and security are, a civic sense of security, that security isn't just about having the best ammunition, etc., or the strong army. It is about women feeling safe in their private homes and in public, and having job security, and knowing that there's an education system where they're not transparent. And for the most marginalized women, it means that there's someone like Naama and like you all that sees them, that they're not transparent. So the data that you shared is both heartbreaking and blood boiling, I have to say. But on the other hand, when I listen to the four of you, I know that there's hope. I know that there's hope for us and for Israel and for Israeli society. And thank you so much for the work that you're doing day in and day out. And our participants, please feel free to use the emoji, the reaction, to shower these amazing, amazing professionals with love and appreciation for the work that they're doing. And I guess I want to thank you all again and turn this over back to you, Kalela.
Thank you so much to all of you. And I can only just, echo what Hamutal said. It's such a privilege to be able to work with you all and to know you all and to benefit from your wisdom and the values that you bring to everything you do. I really mean that, not just saying that because we're on a webinar. And I guess, you know, I would like to also say that there are 4 organizations represented on this panel, but we also wanted to share that there are many other organizations that are active in our network and that are involved in the work that we do together. And we just wanted to, for a moment, just give some presence to them. So I'm just going to share to give you a glimpse, just to see the wealth of action and involvement, and lots of logos and many organizations that are working to address these challenges from different angles. So essentially, it falls on me to turn towards the future and to talk about a little bit about the work that has been being done together by the women on this panel and many other leaders. And what I'm going to do is attempt to share a video which tells that story. And I am going to share my screen now and hope that this works without any technical hitches.
Gender equity is a necessity, not a luxury. When women are absent from centres of decision-making, poor decisions are made. When girls' horizons are narrowed, progress and innovation are hindered. When a traumatised nation does not address the needs of women and girls, the country as a whole cannot fully recover. For a better future to be possible in Israel, we must build foundations of equity. The plans presented here were developed by over 30 organizations working together to build these foundations while the war raged overhead. Each initiative is powerful in its own right, but taken together they are truly groundbreaking. Together, they form a broad theory of change, a strong, cohesive feminist ecosystem that works in synergy to bring about the equitable future we all deserve. Let's hear about them.
אחרי הרבה זמן שהשדה הפמיניסטי עובד בצורה מקבילה, כל ארגון מתמקד בעשייה שלו, הגענו למסקנה שכדי באמת להתמודד עם הסיטואציה הנוכחית, שבה המצב של שוויון זכויות בישראל הוא לא במקום הכי טוב בלשון המעטה.
אין מנכ"ליות במשרדי ממשלה, מספר חברות הכנסת הוא בירידה במקום להיות בעלייה. הבנו שכל ארגון לבד לא יצליח לייצר את אותו אימפקט שאנחנו יכולות לייצר ביחד. וכדי לעבוד ביחד צריך פלטפורמה, והפורום הזה הוא בדיוק הפלטפורמה הזו.
המטרה היא שכל קהל תוכל להביא גם את התוכן שהארגון שלה עושה. נדבר על דברים שאנחנו רוצות להכניס לתוך החדשות, לתוך דעת הקהל ולתוך העבודה שלנו עם נבחרות ונבחרי הציבור, ולא נחכה רק שנצטרך להגיב לעוד איזשהו איום גדול שמגיע אלינו.
נשען על ייעוץ ארגוני ועל ייעוץ אסטרטגי משותף והכי מקצועי בעולם.
יש לנו יכולת להכניס את הסוגיות שלנו ללב ליבה של מערכת הבחירות, ובהמשך גם להכניס את זה להסכמים הקואליציוניים ולאנשים שיושבים בשולחנות הממשלה.
ואנחנו נמצאות פה כדי להגיד שוויון עכשיו, לא שוויון אחר כך. ואפשר לעשות את זה רק כשאנחנו באות בכוחות משותפים.
מיזם בנעליה, In Her Shoes, מאפשר לנשים שעברו טראומה לקבל מענה מותאם. זיהינו שאנשים שעובדים במערכת, שפוגשת את אותם נשים בקצה הרצף הסיכוני, אם זה שוטרים, פקידים של ביטוח לאומי, עובדים סוציאליים, מדריכים, 71% מהם אומרים שאין להם כלים. המערכת לא מצוידת בידע. החזון שלנו בעצם לפתח תשתית ידע ארצית לכל האוכלוסיות שבאות במגע עם נשים על רצף הסיכון. וחשבנו על מרחב נייד שמגיע ממקום למקום בארץ. זה מאפשר לך להרגיש באופן בלתי אמצעי, אם זה VR או מערכת שמע, מה מרגישה אישה על רצף הסיכון. ואחרי שאנחנו נספק את החוויה הזאת, יהיה הרבה יותר קל לעשות המשגות ולתת כלים. אני חושבת שזה יפרק את ההגנות של הרבה מאוד אנשים. אנחנו חושבות שזה יהיה game changer בכל הטיפול באוכלוסיית קצה. בנינו בעצם מודל עסקי שהוא יהיה יחידת רווח לארגונים, זה גם יכניס כסף לתוך ארגונים שהם כל כך צמאים לסיוע כדי להחזיר לשדה, כדי לתת לעוד נשים.
Feminist organizations face specific barriers influencing their work and their ability to scale. Scalerator is a new program that we are going to offer to mid-sized feminist organizations that has experience working in the field promoting gender equity and mostly have a very big potential of growing. We came together, organizations focused on three big systems: education, health, and employment. And we looked at the barriers that we are facing in scaling our work. And through that, we were able to identify the specific barriers that feminist organizations face. And this Scalerator is going to be tailored to these specific needs. So we think that if we would support the organizations growing their scale through technology and through partnerships with the public sector and the business sector, they would be able to implement gender equality, to mainstream gender equality in institutions and the main systems in Israel.
Achieving gender equity in Israel is a fundamental strategic priority. It is vital for our democracy, for our recovery, and for our return to a horizon of peace and security. The initiatives of the Connecting for Impact clusters chart a bold path forward. We invite all who care about Israel's future to join us on this journey.
Hi, I'm sorry for the technical glitches. Just to let everyone know, there's sirens right now in Israel. I'm coming to you here from Tel Aviv. My name is Sharon Dweck, and I am the membership director of the Jewish Funders Network in Israel, and also the founding director of the JFN Gender Giving Forum. I'm very excited to be here today and to share with you that I've actually had the opportunity to be an active participant in the Connecting for Impact process. And seeing this process and these incredible professional women and activists take form and shape under unprecedented circumstances that we're still experiencing has been truly remarkable. These are women on a mission. And I've also had the pleasure of being part of another group of women on a mission, which is the JFN Gender Giving Forum, which is led by JFN board member Daphna Meitar Nechmad. This group came together to literally write the book about gender lens philanthropy. So we all know around the world that investments, philanthropic investments in women and girls and in organizations that promote gender equity account for less than 2% of charitable giving. But we also know that when we invest in women and when we invest in women and girls, the impact multiplies. The impact both on families, communities, and entire societies. So what ended up happening is that the group of funders at JFN came together to literally write the book, The Guide to Gender Lens Philanthropy, which was funded by funders both in Israel and the United States, and in partnership and generosity of the NCJW as well. And the guide is a guide to help funders understand why investing in women and girls matters, and also to understand that strengthening the entire ecosystem is something that, and when an ecosystem works together, is one of the strategies that the guide promotes. I'm very excited to have with us here tonight both Daphna Meitar Nechmad and Stephanie Blumenkrantz. And we will be talking about why they have decided to support this initiative and some of the things that they have seen through their work. And I will just share my screen really quickly. And please apologize that we are going through a siren right now in Israel as well. And the guide that we discussed brings together, and you're all, hold on, let me just share the screen real quick. You're able to download the guide through using this QR code. And the guide was co-written by Dr. Yael Chasson, who you heard from before. And the guide promotes 3 strategic strategies for funders that want to promote gender equity. The first is increasing direct funding for women and girls, looking at that 2% number and increasing it to 20% or 50% so that we can actually see the impact of promoting gender equity through our philanthropic investments. The second strategy that the guide promotes is gender mainstreaming, which is applying a gender lens to all your philanthropic investments, understanding that a neutral or a general grant doesn't necessarily take into consideration the impact of the program on the boys and on the girls and on the men and on the women. And when we apply a gender lens, we're actually promoting effectiveness for both men and women and boys and girls. And the third strategy is investing in field building of the feminist field, looking at capacity building of gender equity organizations. And the guide actually discusses the CFI, the Connecting for Impact project, which is promoted by NCJW. What happens when we bring together 30 organizations working collaboratively, strategically in an in-depth process? So today, we're very excited to have with us 2 funders that promote both of these different strategies, and all 3 of them together, actually. Stephanie Blumenkrantz is the executive director of the Hadassah Foundation. The Hadassah Foundation has been supporting the feminist field in Israel for over 100 years, providing core grants to feminist organizations and building their capacity. And Daphna Meitar Nechmad, she's a longtime feminist leader in Israel. She's the chairwoman of the Board of Governors of Tel Aviv University, and she's a JFN board member as well. Thank you both so much for joining us today. Stephanie, I would like to start with you. And like I said, Hadassah Foundation has been a strategic partner of the feminist field in Israel. And I'm curious, why has the Hadassah Foundation decided to be supportive of a collaborative initiative of Connecting for Impact at this time?
Sharon, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction and for this opportunity to speak with all of you. Why is the Hadassah Foundation? That alarm, it's a real alarm. Kalela, I see you're back on. I'm so glad. It looks like everybody, for the most part, is still on. Please do keep us posted in the chat if things change. I guess the alarms were too much for the video. It just kind of combusted under all of that noise and added.
Thank you for bearing with me, and thank you, Sharon, for stepping in.
Yeah, of course, of course. This is the circumstances we're under and what we're dealing with, which is why we're here and why the Hadassah Foundation and why I personally feel so passionate about this initiative. Rather than starting about the initiative, I would rather start to talk about the individual organizations that are in this collaborative. For an organization to collaborate and lead with others and do that well is really difficult. They have to have a strong internal capacity, they have to have strong networks, and they have to have the wisdom to know when to step up and when to step back. About half of these organizations in this initiative are funded by the Hadassah Foundation, including the fantastic women you just heard from. They are leaders in their field, and the work they're doing is vital to Israel and all of its people. You've heard some of these things, but they're worth me repeating again. In this past year alone, organizations in this collective have helped pass legislation that allows women to sit for rabbinical exams, which has never happened before. And women have to be included in political parties, although we did just hear that still wasn't sufficient, and we need women to lead political parties, which I appreciate very much. Organizations in this network have transformed their approach to gender-informed therapeutic care, and they haven't stopped there. As you heard in the video and from one of our speakers, they're now going on to institutions throughout Israel to make sure other people have this improved model. Their leadership programs ensure that all women in Israel, Arab, ultra-Orthodox, women who live on Israel's periphery can obtain the highest positions. So why do we need Connecting for Impact? These organizations are terrific. CFI is providing these organizations and leaders with the space and the additional resources they need to come together and build on their strengths. What strikes me about this initiative is that it's not about CFI. It's not about NCJW. It's about the organizations and leaders themselves, what they need to do their work well and come together in a coordinated and powerful way. So you might be asking, what does this mean for philanthropy? How do we approach funding organizations in Israel? I can speak for the Hadassah Foundation. We can and will continue to fund these organizations individually. As I said, they are extraordinary. But if we look around us and hear around us, wherever we are, we can't go at this alone anymore. I felt like this before the war, after October 7, and with so much change taking place in Israel. And I feel it even more strongly now. We need to take new risks, try new strategies, and build stronger, more concrete bridges. At the Hadassah Foundation, we've learned that some of the best investments are when we step back. We trust our grantees, we allow them to lead. Mm-hmm. That's why we provide unrestricted multi-year funding wherever possible. Now, we need to take this trust-based approach one step further by supporting individual organizations and, like CFI is doing, strengthening their ability to collaborate and amplify each other's impact. And we're so appreciative to be a part of this process. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. You really do embody trust-based philanthropy, both in the work that you're doing and in the vision to bring everyone together. Toda. Daphna, so you are the chairwoman of Tel Aviv University. Through your work, you've also applied a gender lens to the programs and vision at Tel Aviv University. And in addition, you've decided to philanthropically invest both generously and strategic through your Parent Family Foundation and Connecting for Impact. Can you tell us how these two things integrate into your giving strategy?
Of course. Thank you, Sharon, and thank you for your great contribution to moving the JFN's Gender Lens Leadership Forum forward. Dear friends, before I share how deeply I feel about CFI, I would like to express my admiration for the Israeli women who in these incredibly difficult days continue to lead with courage and strength, mothers, soldiers, fighters, health workers, and so many others who are keeping their spirits high under what feel like impossible conditions, now already 12 years and counting. To answer Sharon's question and add to Stephanie's great points. To me, CFI connects all the dots. JFN, Tel Aviv University, and the advancement of women's equality. In short, impactful philanthropy. I'm speaking to you today as a representative of Israeli philanthropists who, over the past 20 years, have helped transform the Israeli nonprofit sector. Together with many Jewish funders and foundations around the world, they have strengthened how Israeli organizations operate, collaborate, and serve society. This is very much the spirit of JFN. The partnership between Israeli philanthropists and global Jewish funders and foundations have proven itself time and again during COVID, after October 7th, and throughout the long and painful war and the ongoing struggle to bring the hostages home. These collaborations show what is possible when our community works together. And it is also true in our case of supporting women and girls' rights in an area that receives less than 2% of the overall donations received in Israel. The involvement of NCJW with Tel Aviv University began 20 years ago with a generous gift that established the Gender and Women Study program. When started as a bachelor's what started as a bachelor's program expanded to master's program, and today we celebrate hundreds of graduates who hold pivotal roles across Israeli society. This program is also where CFI was born, as a collaboration between academia and the field. It planted the seed for what you have heard about today. And from here, the sky is the limit. As an experienced philanthropist, I can tell you that whenever I want to support a cause close to my heart, and there is no cause closer to my heart than women's equality and women's rights, I look for a place where investment can create the greatest impact. Because we all know that no one can move the needle alone. Not even Warren Buffett, not even Bill Gates. Real change happens through collaboration. That is why we started the Gender Lens Forum at JFN, to bring people together around this shared mission. The blessed outcome of this forum was a Gender Lens Giving Guide you heard of, that we funded and published together a year ago or so. I encourage all of you to review it and add a gender lens to your philanthropical and social involvement. That was the first stage, and the next stage was supporting together the seed stage of CFI initiated by NCJW, who is also a partner to this forum. We could not have chosen a better way to move forward. I will say the obvious for all of you on this webinar. When you support women, you support their families, their communities, their society. It's the best return on investment anyone can ask for. When I look at CFI, I see a real opportunity to create meaningful changes in the Israeli ecosystem and across many organizations. Every dollar invested in CFI multiplies its impact. It supports the initiative itself, the partner organizations, their staff, and most importantly, the women they serve. But beyond that, it strengthens the entire ecosystem and helps secure its future. All of us here today, philanthropists, foundations, non-profit leaders and professionals, Israelis and non-Israelis, share something important. We are, by nature, optimistic people. CFI is a manifestation of that optimism, and I invite you to join us in supporting this initiative, this movement, and this opportunity to build a better future for women in Israel. Thank you.
Wow, Daphna, what powerful words to move us to close this amazing webinar with incredible women. Toda rabba for both you and Stephanie, both for your leadership and for your generosity. And as we close, we will leave the webinar open just a few more minutes if you want to ask questions. But I just want to close with one final thought. We're looking here about networks and about community, and look at the people coming together. Think about the hundreds of people on this webinar and the collective power of what we can do under crazy circumstances. We're all holding together with a mission driven, with a lot of work going together. But what happens when we set our collective intention around the world? We're here from all over the world with intention and kavanah, with trust and emunah as built with this group, and with generosity and shefa. We really can change the reality. We really can change the reality for Israel. And I invite you to join us to do this, because we're here working together on the ground, and with your support, we can really move this forward. Thank you so much for the wonderful panelists today and for the work that you're doing on the ground. Thank you, Stephanie and Daphna. And Kalela, thank you for your leadership. You're an amazing partner. Jody and the entire NCJW staff. We'll now open up and answer questions. Those that need to leave, we will continue the recording, and we will send it to everyone, in addition to the guide to Gender Lens Philanthropy. And thank you again to everyone. We are looking at some of the questions. Does anyone want?
I would like to say one small thing before the questions, because
Yes.
my section before got all fuzzled, and I just want to mention that there's information on our website about the Connecting for Impact initiatives, and there's the ability to donate, and all the donations will go directly to Connecting for Impact. I think Jake has shared a link. Thank you for listening, and back to Sharon and to the questions in the chat.
No, I think that we've answered all of the questions. We will be sending the guide to everyone. We will be sending the presentation to everyone. And there's a link here to learn more about Connecting for Impact initiative on the NCJW website. If there are any other questions that I am missing, please, someone raise their hand.
There's one question in the chat box about who's working to ensure women's representation in politics. So I think Tal can probably best address this.
Thank you.
Sure. First of all, there are colleagues of ours on the call who are doing an amazing work around this specific issue. We have Yali Khiali from 50/50, and we Ela Alon from Itach Ma'aki that speak and work on representation of women. As a formal NGO in Israel, legally, we can support specific candidates. Money-wise or in general. So what we do is we raise awareness together. Our cluster specifically, we raise awareness on the needs of women and what women are looking for as a voter. So that when we talk to parties, we show them how many women and the public in general are looking to see in their party. Gender equity is one part, but also representation is another part of the equation. So we talk about that around with the parties and the chief of the party, the chair of the parties, but we don't support candidates themselves, which is a huge hurdle for them, because we know it's very difficult for women to run to office, money-wise, but also gender violence that they experience specifically. So we try to raise awareness and to support them during their time as Knesset members, but also when they are running.
Yes, Yael Yechieli put some information in the chat as well. Thank you, Yael, for the work that you're doing. It's actually become, the talk of the web right now, the 50/50 initiatives in this current election cycle. So I think with that, we've answered all of the questions. Kalela, I'm turning it back to you and to close us off. And thank you again, everyone.
Well, I really don't have that much to add. I just want to say that we didn't necessarily get the full chance to finalize that video, but the Connecting for Impact initiatives really are amazing. Over 30 organizations involved, addressing sensitive decision-making, public services, the big systems of Israeli society, all in different ways. It's really something that is humbling to be part of, to be able to facilitate. And obviously, it goes without saying, as has been said on this call, all the individual work of each organization, so important, and together pieces of a full puzzle. So, I can only say, I'm sure we'll follow up after this call with more information. We sent some links in the chat, and we'll send up, also in follow up. And we really want to urge you to be part of this work with us. And thank you for joining us today.